So Vito kind of invented this new genre of music called New Age pop. And it's like totally everything I do. So everything that we do together is like this New Age pop. And so this New Age Notes, they're like a radio station, but it's broadcast worldwide. It's on the internet. They had like an awards every year. They have awards for people in the New Age industry, and Vito and I won best album for We Share the Moon, and we won best song for Net of Love, the one you just heard, in the New Age pop category. So that's like a big deal for us. So that's good. It's always nice to be appreciated. Actually, that song also fits our theme today, wherever you go, because it was inspired by the words of Mirabai. Have you guys heard of Mirabai? So she was this poetess from India a long time ago. I don't know how many years ago, a long, long time ago. And she, as a young girl, always felt a love for Krishna in her heart like no other. And she kept saying she was married to Krishna, and she would never get married to anybody else because she was married to Krishna. And no matter what her parents or the town or anybody tried to do, they thought she was crazy. They're like, we're going to put you in school, we're going to marry you off, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. She would go, but she would always say, no, I'm Krishna's wife, and that kind of thing. So she was so super devoted. And so we took words of her poetry and used it to create the lyrics for that song. So that's where it goes. And what's interesting is that what I found by doing all the research on that song and some of the others too, is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like history repeats itself. Things happen, and Mirabai's words although they were written so long ago, still apply today. And that's because God never changes. That's the only thing that doesn't change is God. Now, other things change, but wherever you go, there you are. But then once you get there, you're not there anymore, right? You're here. There becomes here. Just like tomorrow becomes today. In spirit, there's no time or space. So I remember one time I was in a class with Deepak Chopra was teaching, and he was talking about how life is this pendulum. And we're repeating cycles like this and this and this. And, I don't know when this was. It was in the probably like 2000, 2001 or something. And he said, I know this is a hard time. It's a dark time we're going through. We don't know. But just trust that the pendulum's going to swing back the other way. And I asked him the question. I said, where are we on the pendulum? Like exactly, like when can we plan this? And he goes, we never know. We never know. That's the kind of the mystery for us, but it will swing back. And I kind of feel like, here we go again. here we go again. We're on the pendulum. And, when we think we feel like we are in this world, right? But then spiritually, we also learn that the world is in us. And then on an even deeper spiritual level, we learn we are the world, the microcosm, macrocosm, and then that amazing song, we are the world, we are the children. I mean, that is brilliant. That is science of mind right there. I think Michael Jackson wrote the lyrics to that, and he would have thought he studied science of mind. It was amazing. So, yeah, and then so then last night I watched this movie on Apple TV called White Bird with Helen Mirren. Have you guys heard of this? It just came out. They made it a while ago, I think in 22, and it came out in Britain. I think it's a British movie, but It's set in the U.S., but then it's set in France too, and it looks back to when the Nazis were in France, when they occupied France, and what happened during that time. And it's a very touching story. I don't know if it's a true story, but it's a very touching story. And so I recommend it if you want to see it. But it's almost like, echoes of the past we hear now too. And then you guys are going to think I watch way too much TV. So then I'm watching also, I went back and watched Newsroom. Remember that? It was out in 2012. Yeah, and Jeff Daniels is in it, and Olivia Munn, and great cast. And I'm watching it going, oh my gosh, they could have made this today. They could have, you just trade some of the names, but it's an interesting show because it really blurs the line between fiction and reality. Like, the characters in the newsroom are fictional characters, but they're talking about people in real life, in politics and everything that's happening. So it kind of blurs that line of what's real and what's not real. And, that's one of the fundamental principles in Vedanta, this discernment, understanding the difference between what is real and what is not real. And when we're in times like this, it really challenges our perceptions. It really does. And we need to call upon each other to remind ourselves of what is real. The love, the relationships, the connection with God that we see, seeing God within each one of us. That's how we're going to get through all of this. It's a little bit like Alice in Wonderland sometimes, right? Alice seems like a very normal girl, just going about her day when she falls down a rabbit hole or she goes through the looking glass, depending on which story. And now she's in this different world. It's a completely different world. It doesn't make sense to her. Everything's like upside down. And she feels like she's the odd man out now because it's just so crazy. But what happens during this journey is that she learns and grows. And what does she learn? She learns about herself, and she learns about life and how life works. And she can take those lessons and put them in her own life. Really, The Wizard of Oz is the same kind of story. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and James and the Giant Peach. Here you have this normal kid, Dorothy or Charlie or James, living their life, and then they're thrown into this crazy world that doesn't make sense, and they have to navigate and figure it out, And what's real or what's not real? Is it that crazy world that's real? Because it sure feels real when they're there. They're talking to people in like normal language. Or is it the other world? Are they dreaming or are they awake? When are they dreaming? When are they awake? It's an interesting dichotomy when we think of how life works. So now we're in this unfamiliar place ourselves. We're not in Kansas anymore. And sometimes we have to get outside of ourselves. We want to run away. We want to hide. We want to escape to get that perspective, to get that higher perspective. And, sometimes that's a really good thing to do. And then the other thing to do is to go within and really examine how we are feeling and what's happening within us and what we can do. What is our strength? What is our superpower? How can we contribute? What is our role in the course of these things? My friend Lindsay has a group of people. She invited me also a couple weeks from now they're all going to paint signs, and they're going to go down to the mall, and they're going to do their thing, and they're going to make their voices heard, which I think is wonderful. I think for me and Vito, it's like we wrote these songs that are uplifting and give us hope, and it's important for us to get those out there so that people don't lose hope. You can find it. We need insight, we need perspective, and we need the balance of those two things. The Maharishi Mahesh Yogi always used to give the example of, do you take action or do you meditate? Which do you do? And he says you have to do both. And it's like dyeing a cloth. I think I've used this example with you guys before, but it's always good to have a reminder. When you dye a cloth, you dip it in the dye and it gets really wet and soggy, but then you have to set it in the sun. And you set it in the sun and it stays still and it dries. The sun does its job. But it's not done yet. It's not dark enough. So you take it again, you dip it in the dye, and then you set it in the sun. And you do this over and over and over again till it gets color set, where even if you dip it in water, the dye is not going to run. The color is set. And he says that's what we need to do. We also need to remember that we do have a very important role here, whatever time in history it is, because we chose to be here at this time in this place to experience these things. And, there's a theory right now that says that there are a lot of light workers on this planet right now too, and we chose this time to come here because we knew we would be needed. We knew that it was a time for us to come and shine our lights and make a difference in the world. So we volunteered. We can't complain too much. We just need to step up. We just need to step up, whatever's happening in our life. And not just be optimistic, because being optimistic is great. It's knowing that science of mind. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Everything is going to work out just fine. Everything is good. But optimism kind of says, let it be. Whereas hope is more coming from a place of, everything is fine, but it can be better. And I have hope that it's going to be better, and I'm going to take action to make it better. You guys have heard of Greta Thunberg, I'm sure, the activist, the climate activist. When someone asked her, how do you have so much hope? You're so young. Actually, she's 22 now. I mean, she's still young. 22 is still young. But she came on the scene when she was 11. 11, she was making such a difference on the world. It's incredible. But that just goes to show what one voice at the right time, the right place. She was meant to be here. This is her dharma. This is her purpose. She's shaken things up. Presidents tweet about her, this person who is 11 years old. Amazing. But when they asked her, how do you have so much hope? Where do you find your hope? She said, you don't go looking for hope. You go looking for action. What action can you take? And in doing the action, that's when the hope comes. There's where you find the hope, in the action, because now you're doing something. And I think it's really important that, especially taking the action together, uniting. This is an amazing time. I mean, the planets were aligned. We've just had the solstice, right? Is that what it's called? No, the equinox between. yeah, so we've had like all this stuff going on, right? And it's the energy is just crazy. But let's have it be crazy good, right? Let's have it be crazy for good. When things change during these times, they change in a big way. Cory Booker is a senator from New Jersey. I'm sure you guys have seen him on the news before. I see him on Instagram every day. What an amazing leader. What an amazing voice in this world. No matter what's going on in the world, he'll post a little thought of the day, like when he's out on his morning run or something. And I'm like, this guy's got it. You know, with everything going on, so many people would be lost and depressed and exhausted, you know, but he told a story about housing discrimination and how it wasn't so long ago that it was illegal for black people to buy homes. Illegal. And then it got to be legal, but the real estate people didn't like it, and the people in the neighborhoods didn't like it. So they had discriminatory practices that went on. So in New Jersey, they decided to do an investigation where it's kind of like a sting operation. And they would have a black couple go tour these open homes and see what happens. And then shortly thereafter, a white couple comes, tours the home, and see what happens. Well, what they were finding is that when the black couple came and toured home, they said, oh, it's not available anymore. It just sold. Sorry, no, it's gone. You missed it. And then the white couple comes and they're like, oh, yeah, it's for sale. We just marked it down, you know. So this went on enough times so that they figured it out and they knew it was a real thing. So this one black couple wanted to buy a house. They got a white couple to come in for them and say, we're buying the house. But then when it came time to sign the papers, the black couple showed up to sign the papers and said, no, we're the ones who are actually buying the house. Well, the real estate agent and the couple came with their lawyer and then said, this is a law. You can't not sell it to us. We have a deal. We have a contract. This is our home. This is it, right? The real estate agent was so mad that he was found out. He punched the lawyer and got the dog to attack the man. They got out of there. It ended up being fine. They ended up buying the house. That's how hard they had to work for it to buy that house. Well, it turns out that couple then had a baby boy who grew up to be Cory Booker, who's only the 4th black representative sworn into the Senate. It's a miracle. What a difference just a few years makes, you know? It's incredible how these things happen and how there's God's hand guiding it in some way, you know. Now that we can see the whole story, right? And we can look back and say, Cory Booker came out of this situation. We're like, okay, now we see why. Now we understand the whole thing. There's another woman, Anita Morjani. She's an Indian American woman. She's amazing. Yeah, she had a near-death experience. She was so sick from cancer, 4-stage cancer. So sick. They tried everything to cure her. Nothing worked. She was in a coma. The doctors were telling her son, she's in her last hours, and her husband, she's in her last hours. You just say your goodbyes. But when she was in this coma, she had the near-death experience where she saw herself there. She went out of her body. She heard the doctor talking to the husband, heard the doctor talking to the son. She felt free from cancer. She felt free and better than she had ever in her whole life. And she wanted that feeling. And somehow she woke up from the coma and she recovered from the cancer. And she wrote a book to tell everybody about it. And it's just remarkable. And she's out there like, nothing happened. I'm doing great, you know. And let me tell you, there is no death. There is no death. We can all learn. It's an inspiration. People around us are inspirations every day. Okay, so then we don't know. Like, we've had many lives. Krishna says to Arjuna, you and I have had many lives, although you don't recall, but I remember them all. What he's saying to Arjuna is, I'm going to keep track. You don't have to keep track. You don't have to judge people as good or bad or indifferent. I'm keeping track. I know what other lives you've had. I know how you're doing in this life. Just do your best. Do your best and know that that's good. Oh, what I was going to say about Anita Moorjani is, when she was having this experience, she said she saw all of life. And the way she described it was as a big tapestry. And she said when she says big, she means huge, like bigger than the biggest building you could ever imagine and wider than the widest building you could ever imagine. This huge tapestry. And when you stand back and look at the tapestry, it's this beautiful, remarkable thing with rainbows and butterflies and all the animals and all the people and just everything beautiful, clear, purposeful. It all makes sense. It all goes together. And then when you zoom in and you're right up there close, you can see that there are all these threads. And each thread represents a soul. And the threads are interwoven. So each person is touching another's life and another's life and another's life. And all these lives are touching us too. That it's all part of the whole thing. That it is the one. I think that's just so beautiful. So we don't know on this tapestry, you know, our life is a thread, but is our life just this life? No, it's like all these other lives. This is our soul. And we don't know where we've been before. We can't remember in this life. If we did, we'd go crazy. But Krishna, God, Allah, the universe, whoever we want, whatever we want to call it, remembers and knows. So we need to be patient with ourselves. And we need to be patient with the process. And we need to be patient with whatever crazy times we think we're going through. I have one quote here from a great philosopher named Dr. Seuss. He says, you'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Isn't that great? Okay. That little prayer, and so it is.